Today in the studio, we're talking wearables. We got a couple Android watches. I actually have Bruce Parsons to join me again. Bruce, how you doing this morning?
Pretty good, buddy. How's it going?
Pretty good. Friday morning. As you can see on the screen, we have 3 watches here. The Moto 360, the watch I just recently picked up. We have your... Give me the model on yours.
It's a Samsung, or not Samsung, it's the LG G watch.
The LG G watch, and Jacob has graciously donated his watch. And what model is his?
It's that very first Samsung Galaxy Gear.
So Jacob was on the first gen, so we'll play through some of these today. And really, Bruce, Android wearables, anything wearable, it's really going to change life. You know, anything that I can do to make my life easier, that's what I'm all about.
So far, I really liked it. I had the Pebble, which I really liked.
Yeah.
The Pebble's a great watch. The e-ink screen, I would go on like trips and forget the charger, and I could go like a week without having to charge it. It worked really well. It did everything I wanted it to do, but of course something new came out and I had to try it. So my wife got one of the Galaxy Gear watches. She got a pink one, and I became obsessed with it. But the first problem with it...
So you wore a pink watch?
I didn't, but I wanted a watch. I thought I could spray paint it. But I decided to get one and see if I could make it work with my Nexus 5 at the time, because that was the big problem with those watches. Is Samsung was the first to come out, but they locked it down.
They pulled an Apple, so
yeah, you had to have a Samsung phone. And so that watch, actually, we rooted and put an Android 4.2 kernel on it. So that watch is actually running a full Android operating system like a phone would, so that I could pair it with the Nexus 5. And it worked pretty well. It would break every couple of days, and I'd have to patch it and fix it. But for the most part, it worked really well. And then the actual supported Android Wear came out, and I picked up the LG G watch on the first day that you could order it, and it's been fantastic. I get my notifications instantly. If the phone rings and it's someone I don't want to talk to, I just swipe it and don't worry about it. It's been really beneficial for me, but what I've noticed is that when I'm in meetings or doing something, I thought it would be less rude to just check my watch than to pull out my phone.
Dude, no, that's like
everyone thinks I'm just like
in a hurry to get out.
In a hurry to get out and being extremely rude. So that part's not been great, but yeah, so far I really like it.
And that's really what I like about it. It's just having this glance and see who's calling me, who texts me, and then it's. But like you said, or like we just talked about, checking your phone, I guess it's more of a norm, and a lot of times people do it just to avoid, talking to people. If somebody's walking by, or you're on the elevator, the person always grabs their phone out. But usually if somebody's checking their watch, it's I'm ready to get out. Let's go. Time to go. And these watches have really evolved really fast. I mean, you talk about the Pebble. The Pebble wasn't really graphic intensive at all. So you could probably have that thing 3 days, one charge probably. I'm not sure what the charge time on that was.
I went as much as 7.
Really?
Yeah.
See, and then I don't know what your watch time is, but out of my Motorola, it's been, I can probably get a good 10, 12 hours, and that's actually more than it should get. But
yeah, I get about a day and a half. I essentially just throw it on charge every night when I go to bed and let it go. I did notice that if you don't use a charging brick with the correct voltage, that it vibrates all night. Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way.
I learned that with my phones, and it actually will screw with your battery. It'll shorten your battery life by twofold. Yeah. And that's a great thing about this watch. I don't know, does yours plug directly in to charge, or do you put it on a charging stand? Or
it's got a little base station. The nice thing I like about it is it's magnetized,
right.
And so if I just get it close, it snaps together, and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and that's the same way with the Motorola. It just sits on the charging stand, and it charges up relatively quick. I can get a full charge in right around an hour.
Yeah,
right around an hour, and but the battery life just depends on how much you use it and all the push notifications that come through. Because you can obviously set if the Google Now is a battery killer. That's what it's called, right? Google Now.
Yeah, it
is a battery killer. So I've really turned that off on just about all my devices.
Yeah, I like it, but it's I don't know. When I'm traveling, it works better than when I'm here. Because it's not detecting as much. Mostly I get home and it says, "We've noticed your television is on. Would you like to watch this show?" But otherwise, if I'm traveling, though, it's like, here's this great thing that's 2 miles away. Here's this movie theater. Here's this coffee shop. Here's whatever. But we'll get there.
Well, I know where everything in Pikeville is. So, we'll kind of we'll play through some of these today. I guess we'll start. This is the one I'm really only familiar with, so we'll start with the Motorola.
Start with the fancy round one.
The fancy round one. So we got the pull the weather up, blah blah blah. If I get a message, I can open it on my phone if I want to. We'll go down. There's you can mute it, unmute it. Just swipe down. So let's lock it back. And
that's a really nice thing about the LG and the Motorola is they're both running Android Wear.
Right.
So essentially, if you know how to use one, you know how to use the other. And that's been the nice thing that I think that they've standardized is it's got a standard operating system on it. Pebble had their own OS. Samsung had developed. They were using a kernel of Android, but it was really limited. And then they went to Tizen because they're always flirting with the idea of dropping Android altogether, which is never going to work out for them. And then now finally they've gone to Samsung or to get Android Wear as well. I think that's part of the problem that Android was slow to pick up in the market was because of all the fragmentation from all the different suppliers. So it's been nice that Android Wear has just become stock. It all functions exactly the same.
And I think with wearables, you kind of want to go for a standardized that everything can link to. You don't want to, like Samsung puts its own touch on everything, but I think if you're going to be successful in anything wearable, you want to be able to standardize because not everybody's going to have the same thing.
And I read something that said the average user gets about 2 weeks out of a wearable before they stop wearing it. And
see the problem. I know how to fix that. You make it look like this. You make it look like that.
Well, and I think part of the problem too was a lot of those studies started with Google Glass, which is really fantastic, but it's not to wear them and use them is not part of an everyday lifestyle.
It's very impractical.
Yeah, but to wear a watch every day is not. So a lot of people wear watches every day anyway. So because they've integrated that normal use, I think the watches will last a little longer. It's just going to be. I think Samsung has a new one coming out that has its own SIM card, so it has its own data connection. It doesn't have to use your phone tethered to get data, so you can do things on it. I don't know how practical it will ever be to surf the web on your phone, or on your watch, but I think it's interesting that they're moving forward with that.
Well, speaking of practical, have you seen the bracelet that projects onto your forearm?
No.
It projects your phone onto your forearm, so it's just a little bracelet. You wear it like this, and it puts the screen right here, and you can literally just whatever you want to do. It's awesome.
Nice.
It's not. They've had some people try to fake and fraud and get money. People send in crowdfund that way, but it's totally. The company put a big. I think it's called Circa, CIRCA, but they put a big thing out. It's we have maybe one or two prototypes out. Yeah, there's nothing available. Blah 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 blah. But it's really I would probably buy one because I said it'll cover a good 3-4 inches on your forearm, and and you just whatever you want to do.
Nice.
It's awesome.
The thing that it's not a reason to get an Android Wear device, but the one thing I've liked the most out of it that was sort of a surprise to me. One of our vehicles that my wife and I drive has navigation built in. The other one does not, and so we had the unit you would mount up there, and it was always falling off the window, and it was just annoying. And so I would always just use my phone to do Google Maps.
Yeah.
And then you're looking down at the phone and all that sort of stuff. So now when I drive the car that doesn't have navigation, I type that in on the phone. I throw the phone over in the passenger seat, and whenever I'm a mile from my turn, my wrist vibrates. I look and it says turn right, turn left. It's so much because even the navigation that's built into our car, I hate it. It's it gives you every 10 seconds you're getting turn left on this road, and it just reads out constant notifications, and I don't need all those. I just want to know exactly when I turn. So until they develop a GPS that has a minify, it's not even a word, but I want minimal notifications. I only want what I absolutely need to know to get where I need to go. I don't need constant roads and all that sort of stuff. So until that comes out, I'm using this.
Yeah, and Google Maps it's actually pretty, and it's still in beta. They still claim it's in beta. I don't know how, but
I just think they like to do that.
Everything's in beta.
Yeah.
Do you think Gmail's still in beta? But yeah, Asus actually they just came out with a new watch. It's probably the second best looking watch behind the Motorola.
Yeah, theirs looks really nice. That leather band that it's got. Yeah, it's really nice.
The only thing I didn't like about the Motorola is I don't know if I couldn't figure out how to change the band out at first, and then it was really a pain to get the links out. So I actually had to take it to a jeweler. And the jeweler had a hard time changing it out. Like, they literally just beat my watch to death, and I was like, no, don't scratch it.
Yeah, as you can see, my band is blue, which is not what came with it. I was traveling a couple weeks ago, and I had a backpack in the airport, and the strap caught the watch, and the watch went flying, and it ripped the band in two. So I had to buy a new one. But luckily, that watch, and I think that original Samsung, when you look at it, it's got a camera built into the band. So if you break that band, you're in trouble. You're gonna have to buy a pretty expensive band to replace it.
Yeah.
But these other watches, they take standard 20 millimeter or 22 millimeter watch bands. So I actually went to one of those little news markets in the airport and found the cheapest watch I could find. It was like $7 on the shelf. Bought it, took the band off, and used it for the week that I was gone. Got back and just picked one out on Amazon, and it was here, and it popped right on. Took like 5 minutes.
Yeah, before the metal band came out for this, people were putting articles on. You put the pebble band on there, the stainless steel pebble band. They were doing that for a while. And
I have to say that's the first time I've really seen the Moto 360.
Yeah, I didn't show it to you.
Yeah, no, it's so nice. It's the best looking one by far.
You'll probably have one tomorrow. Your wife's going to kill you.
Yeah, I might get in trouble. I've been buying a lot of technology lately, so.
That's a bad habit. Was it a 2 espresso day or 3 espresso day this morning?
Today was a coffee and an espresso.
Coffee and espresso.
So what call it a red eye.
If you love coffee and you haven't watched it, yeah, it's a red eye. Yeah, it's a red eye. If you love coffee and you haven't watched it, a film about coffee. That's the title of it, right? Mm-hmm. Just a film about coffee. It was on Vimeo. We can rent it for $4.99 or purchase it for $15. Which, personally, if you love coffee, I suggest you can rent and watch it. But if you purchase it, the money's going for a good cause. Like, the documentary is beautiful, man.
Yeah, the cinematography is amazing. It looks fantastic.
But if you haven't checked it out, we'll throw a link up on the Holler page for you. If you love coffee, I suggest you watch it. That's how we get through our mornings here. And for just the final thoughts about these watches or anything wearable, it's just, if you look at the Pebble came out, how many years ago? How many years ago the Pebble came out?
Two
or three. So
I think it was 3 years ago they started on Kickstarter.
So let's say 3 years ago, 2011, wearables really started hitting the scene in the last 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. But if you just look at how they evolved from then until now, a lot of the problem was, they didn't look good.
Yeah.
Or it was just really a fad. Kind of like Google Glass, like you said, which that in the end that'll end up being.
They just apparently signed some deal yesterday with Ray-Ban.
Yeah.
So they're gonna address the aesthetic issue.
Well, Apple. Let's talk about what Apple said. Let's hear
from yesterday.
From yesterday.
Let me pull it up. So I just go through random headlines every day, especially for technology, and I came across one that was apparently in the original iPods. Apple got caught deleting songs that weren't purchased via iTunes. It would detect that the songs were there. It would come up with an error message saying that your iPod needed to be reformatted or restored via iTunes. And when it would come back up for you to use, any song that wasn't purchased on iTunes was wiped. And you didn't know it until you were driving around or walking around trying to listen to those songs. And so they asked Apple about it, and Apple security director Augustine, I don't know the last name, Faraguay, said that Apple didn't want to explain things in more detail as the company doesn't need to give users too much information. And this is quotes, "We don't want to confuse users." That's awful.
That's very awful.
Like, we're going to assume that you're ignorant and you don't know anything about the technology that you own, and we know better how you should use it. And that philosophy worked when the first iPod came out, when the first iPhone came out. But with the launch of iOS 7 last year, so many consumers have access to smartphones. They no longer need skueomorphism and all that stuff to learn how to navigate those systems. We're all becoming, much more qualified tech consumers. So we don't need companies like, especially Apple, making those decisions for us. I can make that decision. And this route, so a lot of people ask me, they're shocked when they find out I went from an iPhone to an Android. And this statement, we don't need to give users too much information, we don't want to confuse them, that's exactly why I left.
Well, most consumers aren't really going to understand that or care at all. But I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying. At least Google's telling you what they're doing, you know. So we'll say the NSA, you know, they'll take everything. They take all your information, but you know, Google does it too. But at least they tell you, like, look, we have access to this, and this. Like the new Inbox app, that essentially learns everything that you do. Mm-hmm. It really just learns your life. Yeah. But I mean, they're not hiding it. They tell you about it if you agree to it, you know. But they don't hide anything. People, like 3 years ago, it's when 3 or 4 years ago is really when Google started indexing everything that you did on the search engine and just putting it all together. Like they have their own catalog, just like the NSA does.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't do anything bad. I just come on, I have my rights. But I mean, it's just the two different companies. Apple's gridlocked into being some. They're strictly American based, and they just want to hide everything. And,
yeah, well, and the thing that really makes me angry about Apple is how slow they've been to change. They were always the leaders in what was next, and now they're not. They wait. You know, I'm not a Microsoft guy ever.
No.
But the Surface Pro 3 is pretty amazing. The fact that I can take that tablet in that small form factor and have a full PC on that tablet. There is no reason that they can't make an iPad that is powerful enough to run Yosemite. There's no reason they can't do it, but they don't see the need to shake up the system because they're already making so much money. They're already selling iPads. Why would they develop that? You know, and Microsoft had to make that move because they had nothing to compete with the iPad. And so instead of letting need and innovation dictate what they do, they're purely driven by profits at this point.
And that's like they have a stranglehold on it. So if you went and bought an iPhone outside of America, say you went to South America, it's going to cost you at least $1,200. Yeah. And whereas you can go to Korea where Samsung's made, I think LG's made there too, and say the latest Galaxy's going to cost you $70 domestic. Yeah. So I mean, that's cool that they have a monopoly on everything, but it's hard to fathom how, even though they didn't have momentum when they were making changing technology, like they were the first with everything, they didn't have all this momentum, and it's really what took them a while to build up the sales. And now that they have it, everybody has an iPhone or everybody has an iPad, but now they're not doing anything.
They're dropping all their professional support. Yeah. At least I think they are. If you look at how long it took them to update the Mac Pro, like the new one that came out is fantastic, and we have some in the studio, but it was years, and they just sort of let it drop because they were selling more iMacs. iMac was more consumer friendly. Let's do that. You know, they used to be the leaders in that sort of stuff, and Final Cut Pro is the best example. I used Avid, and Avid is a far superior editing system, but Final Cut Pro was cheap, and you could get your hands on it, and you could dive right in and start to edit. And then they decided to make it iMovie Pro instead, and could care less what the professional community thinks. It's, at least that's what it seems like to me. So, I mean, I'm still going with Apple for my computers and my laptops and all that sort of stuff, but that's just because there's no competitor. All it would take is a really good Chromebook, and I would drop this as well.
I told you, put on Facebook last night that there's already Chromebooks that have specs far superior than several MacBook Air models, and if there would be one come out that would trump the Mac Pro, which I'm not saying the Mac Pro has the greatest hardware ever. It doesn't by any means. I can go out and get several Windows models. It's just I like the OS X. I haven't been an OS X user for many years, like 2 years. I switched over 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I'll admit I've bought many, and my friends and family know this. I've bought many Apple products based on the fact that how cool it looks.
Yeah,
you know, but it also functioned well, and the new Mac Pros look absolutely amazing. But that's the only product that's come out in the last 4 years that actually looks amazing and is functional from Apple. All the iPhones look the same. You know, the new watch is horrendous. They hired all these fashion designers to make it. It's got a giant dial on it. Like in the age of touchscreens, why do I need a dial on the side?
And all you can do really is doodle on your phone. I mean, you might like that. You're a graphic designer. You're a graphic designer, but nobody needs that.
No.
It's all Google, man. Android people. I can't have a discussion with somebody logically that has used iPhone that can understand. It's like I had Android like 3 or 4 years ago. It's horrible. I lasted like 2 weeks. I'm like, if you went back now, you would understand.
I really, really want to go to Google I/O. Like it's one of those like
You just want the free stuff.
I want the free stuff, absolutely. Like last year, I registered. It's a raffle. Like it's luck of the draw. However many people register their names, and then an algorithm spits out who gets a ticket and who doesn't. And so I registered last year and didn't get it, and I'll register again this year and see what happens. But last year, it was the LG G Watch and the Moto 360 launched at Google I/O, and Android Wear officially launched there. And so as you registered and came in, you got to pick. You could have one of the two, and you got which one you wanted. So also their Nexus TV box premiered there. A lot of people got.
Did you pre-order that?
I didn't. Did you get one?
No, not yet. I'm probably thinking about a hardcore. I think the gaming will come into play somewhere on that.
I think so too.
Somebody will jailbreak it so I can load all my ROMs that I paid for.
Well, that's the great thing about Google is you can just root it and then do what you want.
Yeah. If you have a phone, an Android phone, and you can update to Android Lollipop, I suggest that you do that. I know that AT&T hasn't released yours yet. I'm sorry.
No, but I got to play with it. So I got the new Moto X, and I passed my Nexus 5 off to my dad. He had an old iPhone 5, and one of the buttons didn't work. And
I think everybody's had buttons.
He needed to upgrade, but he wasn't interested in paying those contract fees. So I passed that along to him, and I put Android L on it before I gave it to him. And I almost didn't want to give it to him because I was playing with it, and I was like, "This is fantastic."
It's the cleanest, fastest. It's the best operating system I've ever used on a mobile device, period. It's probably one of the best operating systems I've ever used, period, for a piece of hardware.
As a designer, I just appreciate that they're taking aesthetics into play and that the color schemes that the UI uses can adjust based on what app I'm using or what I've been surfing.
That's awesome.
On the web. Yeah, that's amazing.
They're Apple will catch up eventually.
No, they won't.
Did your Yosemite, you put Yosemite on your MacBook, right? Mm-hmm. Did it slow down any at all? Mm-mm. I've been having a lot of cache issues, so if I have Google Chrome up, it'll pop up 3 or 4. If 3 or 4 different windows are open, for some reason Yosemite isn't playing well with how to keep. The longer the windows stay up, the more memory it sucks.
Well, given the fact that Apple has been exposed for price gouging ebooks when the iTunes store started selling books, and then this recent development that they would wipe things that weren't bought from Apple off of your iPad, it would not shock me at all with how much they're pushing Safari if Yosemite is not tuned.
Oh, Safari doesn't do it,
yeah.
So yeah.
If Yosemite is not tuned to slow Chrome down, like I don't doubt that at all.
You're losing me.
I used to love Apple, but I'm telling you, that's exactly what they're doing. They're slowing it down on purpose. Yeah. The only problem I have with Yosemite, I really like it. It's clean. My work phone is an iPhone, so I like that they integrate. If I'm teaching class or doing something, those notifications come through on the laptop while it's open, so I like that. But the Wi-Fi has been a nightmare. Like I have to restart, even after the updates. I have to restart my computer all the time
drops.
to be able to connect. Yeah.
And I saw an article last night. I don't know where I read it, but some guy put on. It wasn't Wired, but it was something else. He said, "Why I'm switching back from an iPhone 6 to a 5S." And he's like, "I suggest you should do the same." And it had a big list of reasons why, but most of it wasn't personal preference. He gave a lot of valid reasons. I'll try to find that article for you, but it's kind of crazy. If
you start to look at headlines past Bendgate and all that sort of stuff, and my iPhone 6 so far has not bent.
Been in your pocket?
Yeah, I don't put it in my pocket that much, so that's probably why it hasn't bent. But if you look at like with the Moto X and the Nexus 6 being the new Android phones, the Moto X has been out as long as the new iPhone has, and people are still writing articles about what the Nexus 6 can do and what the Moto X can do, how to best use your phone, what's impressive about the phone, all that sort of stuff. I know Apple is selling a lot of these phones right now, but all of the conversation and all of the tech articles have already moved on to what the next version is.
Yeah.
No one's talking about what's actually out now. They're already talking about what comes out a year from now or 9-10 months from now. Nobody cares.
That's their.
And I used to be a diehard Apple person, and there are going to be diehard Apple people who watch this, who I know are going to roll their eyes at me right now.
I love making Apple people mad, but I'm an Apple guy, but I just love it.
They've lost their touch.
Well, Google's the next Apple. If you want to just switch places.
That's the crazy thing about Google's they're doing everything.
Google does everything.
They're doing everything. Google Fiber. If we could get Google Fiber here, I'd be so happy. If we could get Google Loon here, I would be happy. Have you seen Google Loon?
The
like the weather hot air balloon things they have.
I saw they launch them in different.
Yeah, in like extremely rural places who can't get internet connection. It's like 4G LTE.
Yeah, they have
network.
they have the satellites sitting pretty low too, so the latency's not even that bad.
No, and they broadcast it down for free, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Free internet. I love free stuff.
And they're not afraid. They're not afraid to put stuff out there and fail. They make some products, they work. They make some products, they don't, but they keep trying. Apple, I've not seen them put out anything in the last few years where they were attempting something. And they used to do that. The Newton and all the first little handheld things they did were failures, but they learned from them.
The Newton was actually the Newton was ahead of its time. There was a video online, I don't know if you saw it. It compared the Newton, it was a PDA. It was Newton PDA, that's what it stands for. It was a Newton PDA, and it was up against an iPhone. So somebody was typing out on a note, like the note app, they were typing out something, and some other person was side by side swiping on the Newton. And by the time the person would be done typing the word, the Newton would either be done or ahead of it. And the Newton was what, 2001, 1999 maybe?
Yeah.
It was really late 90s or early 2000s. Yeah. So the Newton probably was the Newton and the iPod.
It was before the big Palm craze.
Yeah, the big Palm, like the Windows Palm OS or whatever. Dude, that thing was massive. But, so if you don't have an Android watch, and I said Android watch, get one. You won't be disappointed. There's several models, honestly.
And they're price tiered. It's not an entry point of like $400. Like your watch is not going to cost more money than your phone.
Yeah, and I told you that on the Play Store they just marked down the LG model to $99.
The watch I have right here with the blue bands you can get for $100.
The Motorola is a little bit more pricey, and the metal band obviously comes into that, but it's so freaking beautiful. Like it really is, and I wish I could show them off more, but.
And I think that's why a lot of wearables have failed,
so
and that's like why people get so upset over Google Glass is the $1,500 was a huge entry point.
$1,600 tax.
Yeah, exactly. It was a huge entry point. So you really expected a whole lot out of it. And the first watches that came out were $250, $350, and so you expect it. But now that they're coming down in price and that they're more reasonable, and you can get something that's not as expensive, or you can go for the top tier, I don't think, I'm not going to expect as much out of a $100 watch. Like if it gives me my notifications and it helps me a little bit through the day, it is more than worth that money. I don't have to put all that pressure on it to be this amazing piece of, hardware.
And I don't really expect it to do more than that. The next wearable thing I'm going to pick up before we close out here is it's like the fitness wearables. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Like if you're into this kind of thing, they're amazing. Jawbone's coming out with a new one. It's called the Up version 3. But man, those things, like, they track everything you do. Like, they'll know what sleep cycle you're in, and when you hit like the deepest point of your sleep, and it feels that you've got adequate rest. When you hit your deepest point, it'll wake you up. Once you hit that sleep pattern, so it knows that you'll have the best sleep based on what sleep pattern you're in. I don't know how it does. It's crazy. They track everything. So
and lots of people are getting into that market. Razer, who are known for their video game. Laptops and keyboards and mice, they have a new wearable that's out.
What's that?
I think it's some form of watch, but it's designed to track all the things in your life, not just send you notifications. And so it integrates with some apps on your phone or your PC. But, they're trying to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, used to when they first came out, you'd wear it and then you'd plug it in your computer and you'd pull all that up. Yeah. But now it's Bluetooth, so, it tracks what you eat, how many calories you've burned, how many steps you've taken, what your heart rate is, just freaking everything, man. It's glorious. But I'm telling you, wearables, eventually we'll have a chip in our head. Terminator to holler.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Hey, Arnold's back. You seen the Terminator trailer?
I haven't seen the trailer. I saw the teaser for it.
Well, the teaser for the trailer?
Yeah.
The trailer
comes out today, doesn't it?
Yeah, it comes out today. Teaser for the trailer. But Bruce, appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, man.
But we'll talk again. Take us out, Jake.